I don't know what your definition of a traditional wedding is, but I'll bet you didn't expect to find yourself at the first venue you'll ever see tonight. The Roman Forum. Inhale that musky scent, standard in all Roman constructions, as if you've just put your nose in a pot of olive oil. And now imagine hundreds of guests descending on a banquet hall from their own homes, striking up conversations a pace or two away from where you sit, learning what present Caesar has planned for Rome in 38 BC. You stand in a villa courtyard, laurel in the air, with the background sound of a lyre. Your heart is fluttering, in agonized anticipation of meeting your future partner for the first time. You probably won't keep your dignity through this, but at least, well, you'll have a good tale to tell in the next world. Before you get too comfortable, please like this video and subscribe if only you've put out for yourself here. And then please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what the data is for your location. Now dim the lights, maybe switch a fan on for that gentle background hum, and let's begin our journey tonight. You traipse over the cool marble of the pavements, softly slapping your sandals as you go. You can hear adults talking sotto voce, glancing at you with that world-weary aversion that they reserve for prize sheep going off to market. In Rome, a wedding is not a matter for romantic notions. It is a matter of alliances and a stake in real estate properties. The main objective is to ensure that your family name is not dead as the bread of yesterday. There will be no butterflies fluttering in your stomach. You get married because your parents say so, and if you're fortunate, at least you'll get a good dowry out of it. The marriage of Roman was understood as the glue that kept society together. Without this established institution, low-income families would collapse, and heaven might get upset. The kicker? The parents arranged most weddings. Your parents, your uncles, and perhaps even your neighbor's cousin have been scheming this for months. And you are just riding along for the tide. Historians still debate whether Roman children had any say at all, or if the rare love match was merely a myth discussed at dinner parties. Both of you can hope. You take a good look at your future spouse. You may have seen the person before, once in a crowd at the market, or maybe not at all. If you are a female, you are about 12 to 14 years old enough by Roman standards to have children of your own. If you are a male, then you might be older, perhaps 16 or 17, but not old enough to rent a car. There is indeed an age gap here, and it feels strange. The grown-ups are more excited than you are. This is a business deal to them. Your daddy clasps hands and grins with the man who will be your father-in-law. Both of them look as though they just won a lottery ticket. The mothers whisper about dowries, how many silver coins, how much land, and even a few enslaved people thrown in for free. And you're just praying your spouse-to-be has decent breath. Lo and behold, Roman weddings were much less about the couple and a great deal more about their families. The Latin word for family, familia, included everyone from your little drool machine brother who eats rusks to the cook who bakes your favorite honey cakes. When you marry, it's not only a partner you're picking up, but rather two whole households. It's like a corporation taking over another corporation, but with togas and not so many ledgers. Yet one cannot relax. In all this happiness, there is something unusual. Some families would consult omens before a match was agreed upon. If a bird flew the wrong way, or the family dog sneezed at the wrong time, then the whole deal could be off. You could lose your future spouse because a pigeon had a bad day. Historians still debate today how much such superstitions mattered, or if they were just an excuse to wriggle out of a bad deal. You try to catch your mother's eye in the hope of a smile, but she is too busy counting money and murmuring about your prospects. Did she ever meet your father before their marriage? Or did she wake up one day and find herself married with 3 children and a very bad-tempered parrot? You wonder. It's still days to the ceremony, but you can feel the pressure mounting already. It is expected that you will be on your best behavior, will smile pleasantly, and will pretend that you are overjoyed to be married to someone who is, after all, hardly known to you. If you are lucky, your new spouse will be kind. If not, well, at least you can get a divorce, sort of. But that is another story. Now you concentrate on the present. The villa is bustling with activity. Servants are busy polishing the silver, your brothers and sisters can see you in every corner, and grandmother is recounting to anybody who will listen the story of her wedding, which involved a goat, a thunderstorm, and a very bewildered priest. Okay, try not to think about what it will be like when your turn comes. You glance at your reflected image in the bright bronze mirror hanging on the wall behind you. You look so scared, so pale. But it's not as if things could be any different in any case. In Rome, marriage is but a duty you fulfill, not a dream. Your job now is to marry your subject, please your parents, and hope that the gods will smile down on you. The song of a flute reaches you as the sun goes down. A faraway wedding is taking place. More nervous, maybe, than you are? Does she already dream of a different life? Roof, perhaps that will steady your nerves a little. Tomorrow it's the real thing. The Romans are famous for their weddings. Yet as you shut off the light, you can't help but wonder. Will your wedding be a symbol in the minds of future Romans, only recognized for its thoroughly strange customs lost to time? Only time and a couple of scholars poring over the record will tell. As soon as you wake up, you hear your mother talking in the next room with her husband about how unsuitable a match yours is for her. The sun is not up yet, but already the house is a hive of activity. Servants bustling about and the smell of bread baking in every room. Today you are not just a kid. You are one of the pieces in Rome's display window, a trading pin in the Roman marriage market. You turn back to the kitchen door, hoping for some peace, to no avail. The festivities begin with a procession of different relatives, all waiting to lead their parade in the Roman Forum at some point in the future. Your father walked through the vestibule, looking for thrifty colleges as he voiced his consternation concerning dowries. He's not worried about you being happy. He worries whether your future spouse's ancestors were senators or generals. The 2,000 years since this era have seen a great many changes, but at least one thing hasn't changed in Rome. Ancestry means everything. It's a win-win for your future in-laws if they can trace their lineage back to some renowned war commander or another, or a well-connected senator's family. If not, well, there are always more bachelors and bachelorettes to come in next year's crop of eligibles. You sit silently through the talk of your assets, your dowry if you're female, which in modern terms might be anything from money and land to valuable pieces of jewelry you will bring into marriage. For boys, how their family reputation looks and whether they might inherit their uncle's vineyard craftsmanship, they explained later. Has nothing today except a matter of practical considerations ordinary people fall prey to. Historians still argue whether Roman parents cared more for wealth or influence when looking out for their daughters and young children's future most of all. But in any case, love had nothing at all to do with status. Here's one fact that everyone knows. In ancient Rome, marriages were almost always arranged by the parents, especially among the upper classes. Spiritual marriages were few and far between. Even when they did occur, they met with small public approval. The idea was to cement alliances between families, not make you faint at the mere thought of falling in love. If you are fortunate, your parents will at least ask you whether or not you think your future spouse is bearable. If not, perhaps this person has never been seen by you before Thursday's evening meal, after which all involved parties leave together with garment bundles for a goodnight embrace job at once. But here's a strange piece of news. The family occasionally turned to professional matchmakers. Yes, just like ancient Roman Tinder, but wrinkly and with only occasional fits of temper. These people knew everyone's secrets, from who had a secret gambling problem to whose cousin once tried to poison a neighbor's goat. If you are miserable, your matchmaker is your great-aunt, who wants to marry you off before you are 15. Between the in-laws, you are examined like a newly purchased carriage. They ask about your health and your manners. Do remember a couple of lines of Horace. If you are a girl, they might even inspect your teeth water to see if you show marriage material, including a perfect set of molars and a well-developed neck. You try to smile, but it's hard to do when you feel like a prize at the fair. But the negotiations may go on for days or even weeks. Your parents wrangle over every detail. The size of your dowry, the color of your wedding blanket, and whether you can bring along some slaves. If your family is wealthy, then the size of your dowry will likely reflect this. You may even receive land and jewels in full, or, for that matter, have parents who are willing to borrow from the most established neighboring family or else pawn off a cherished heirloom before passing it along as an inheritance. Historians have never quite agreed. Did the dowry protect the bride, or were its gifts simply a sweetener for the groom's side? While passing by, you eavesdrop on the father and mother-in-law disputing about whether the dowry should include 3 trees or 2. 3 trees. Insist your father as if your whole future depends on acquiring a few more jars of olive oil. You wonder if anyone will ever do what you want, but you know better than to say anything. In Rome, children are taught to obey their parents, especially in matters of marriage. I could use this sentence to highlight the significant pressure involved in finding a suitable match for British families. If you marry well, then the name of your family is elevated. But if you marry badly, then people might be talking about it for years to come. You think of your cousin Julia, who married someone with a bad name. Now, whenever she stops by to visit, the neighbors whisper behind her back. You swear that you, too, will do your best not to end up like that, but it's mainly up in the air. Never full. Sometimes now it falls through. Perhaps your father wants too much, or your future parents-in-law find a skeleton in the closet of your this or that member. If so, Shanxiaxi still has to look. This is exhausting, and the thought of never getting married begins to creep back into your head. But don't worry, there's always another catch out there, even if it takes several tries. Here's a good piece of trivia. In some instances, the bride and groom were related cousins or even siblings. The Romans weren't too worried about inbreeding, provided only that it would keep land from being divided. Historians still argue over how standard such practices may have been, but they did happen more frequently than one might think. Hence, if your future husband or wife looks especially familiar, well, as the day goes on, one feels like a commodity without a body attached. But to this, you remind yourself that it is just the way things are. A Roman marriage is one of survival, yours, your family's, and your ancestors'. It's a long lineage, and even though you know that, it's still strange. At long last, your parents reach an agreement. There's a handshake, some relieved smiles, and a date in the future. You are dutifully engaged, no matter whether you want to be or not. You try to look happy, but deep down inside, you're still nervous. What if your future spouse is cruel? What if you don't get on? The current trend suggests that, despite the prevalence of unhappy marriages, Roman couples still live together. Was fate kind or harsh on their lives? Finally, what will tomorrow bring when I climb into bed? Will I awaken in the morning elated, or just even more confused? Only time and a few more awkward family meetings can tell. It is not yet dawn when you wake up to your mother humming busily in her ears, and she's already bustling around. Today, though, the house feels different. There's a buzz in the air as well as an underlying sense that something important is about to happen. You're not just a delinquent kid any longer, you're officially betrothed. But don't expect a meteor shower of flowers or sudden tango bright flash mobs at the forum. In Roma, engagement is all business. No butterflies around the corner. Shuffling forth into the atrium, your father waits with a small box. He opens it to reveal a simple iron ring. Not a diamond stone in sight. No golden thread woven round. Just a plain band from which I have visions of being scratched all over. He slips it onto your finger and people clap politely. This is called your annulus prenubis, your engagement ring. It is not meant to glitter among friends. It marks that you are off the market now. But whether in reality the ring was worn on the third finger because Romans believed a vein led straight to the heart, or if it was all a sweet story made up later by folks with nothing else to do, you try to smile as the heads of your future in-laws soon arrive bearing their bouquets and making embarrassed conversation. The engagement, or sponsalia, is not only a formal event in itself but also an agreement. Your fathers shake hands and sometimes even sign on the dotted line. If one side reneges now, though, there are long-term consequences. You might lose the dowry or, worse, become gossip for all time. Remember, you're not just promising to get married. You're promising to bring no shame to your family. No pressure here. For the Roman hierarchy, the practice came down from the emperor to the soldier. Even today, dating a boss means control of one's future. A broken partnership could lead to lawsuits, lost property, or even public embarrassment. If a girl, you might be sent shamefacedly back home to your parents. If a boy, he would have to pay and pay. In comparison with this, it made me wish that I'd never gotten married and instead lived the life of a herdsman. Buddhists would say this is samsara condensation, reincarnation in the same form, only cheaper. Here's a funny little oddity. Sometimes an engagement banquet would be held on the grounds of both the bride's and groom's families, and invariably, There's a stylized wrestling match between them to examine everyone. It's hard to imagine your uncle wrestling your future father-in-law in the atrium while you're trying not to spill wine on yourself. Historians still argue whether these massive tiffs were serious or just a way to shake up the evening. One thing we do know: they were a lot more exciting than dreary old dinner parties. You sit there quietly as other people make plans for your wedding. The date, the guest list, even what menu to serve at dinner, all don't matter that much anymore. Isn't the time ripe to slip away? Then you must nod and smile as if quite happy. Even though secretly, each night in bed, you are wide awake with all those thoughts about how much trouble this is going to be with everybody not having any sense. If your prospective spouse is good-natured, they may try making small talk. Otherwise, you could spend the whole of your engagement party helplessly staring at sandals. The engagement period is also a time for families to showcase their talents. Your mother wheels out her finest silver while Papa boasts away about the family's accomplishments. Then your prospective in-laws do likewise, and before you know it, there are all the tales of battle and gallant ancestors. Though you try to keep up with all this, it's not easy to do what with everyone speaking to you at once. Historians still argue over whether these tales were true or just a way of impressing people living next door. The neighbors. And, as the party begins to wind down, your host presses a small gift into your hand. It may be a bangle or bracelet, a book, or some little lucky charm that will bring good fortune in the life now starting. You stuff it in a pocket or your bag, hoping that it does better than the last lucky piece did. That brought only an evil hair ghost for 7 whole days. There is a great deal of pressure to behave appropriately. You have to be polite, you have to be decent, and above all, you have to be obedient. One blunder, and your husband's parents will hear about it for a month. You remember cousin Marcus, who spilled wine on his future mother-in-law's dress and whose name is still the family joke at every reunion. You vow to yourself that you will be careful. If it means holding your breath every time you reach for a sip, so be it. Another little-known tidbit: the engagement might even have involved a formal speech in which your father lists all your virtues. If you are a girl, these consist of your ability at weaving, your modesty, and the fact that at the table you know how to hold your tongue. If you are a boy, on the other hand, it is all about your future career and how well you can run a home. Historians are still debating whether these speeches were heartfelt or served only as make-work. As the sun dips below the horizon, the guests begin to take their leave. Your future spouse gives you a timid smile, and you start to think that it may not be so bad after all. Then you remember all the conventions and how little you know each other, and the feeling fades. You wish you could just run away and join the circus, were it not that Rome has none. The questions have kept you up. When in Rome, however, a busted marriage is no easy matter. You have to be prepared to return all the gifts and damage the good name of your family forever. Historians still argue whether these regulations are designed to protect the couple or help to keep families in line. Mentally, you lie in bed and listen. The creaking of your house somewhere below is like a closed quotation mark marking an end to this day. A dog is barking off in the distance. Maybe it's an omen. Someday the sun will rise for you again, or at least bring back bacon buddies. In the meantime, all that lies ahead is for sleep to close your weary eyes once more. Wedding rings, and gawky denunciations at public gatherings. The sound of your mother whispering to the household priest wakes you up in the morning. As you sit up in bed and yawn, look to gaze at what to wear this day or which table guests will come to sit down near. It is only today that matters. When will you pony up the knot? In Rome, the whole question of the wedding is almost as complicated as picking a day. You cannot pluck any old date from the sky. Oh no, that approach would be entirely too easy. You need to draw charts, check astrology, and plant a few hens to get the correct choice of days for your marriage. Dad is in the kitchen, hunched over a wax tablet with a list of dates. Having been up all night writing letters, he looks groggy and worn out. The Roman calendar is packed with festivals, religious holidays, and days when the gods are in bad moods. You can't get married on the dies nefasti, days when public business is forbidden. If you let them go without getting married, you'll suddenly have to wait an entire year, starting right next spring. Another superstition holds that May brings misfortune. It still does to this day. Historians have been unable to decide whether this superstition began with a festival for the dead or if it was simply an excuse to avoid the spring cleaning rush. Her nimble fingers are already crossing out dates. Not the Ides and not the calends. And don't even consider it during the Lemuria festival. Your mother mutters to herself. It allows men to shudder, and women do not like hearing about it. Try to picture great-uncle's ghost standing in a corner of the parlor holding a piece of cake, and it's all you can do to keep from laughing aloud. Here's food for thought. Romans believed that certain days were dies Fausti, which translates as lucky days, and then others were dies nefasti, the complete opposite or unlucky. The Pontifex Maximus, or head priest of the Roman Empire, kept a calendar that showed which days were lucky for marriage. If you choose the wrong day, you risk not only the wrath of divine omniscient gods but also, perhaps, your mother-in-law. Nobody wants that. Bizarrely enough, some families would hire professional augurs, priests who predicted outcomes from the flight of birds or the entrails of sacrificed animals, to help plan the perfect wedding date. Tomorrow, imagine your parents on the balcony, counting a flock of crows and debating whether they're flying to a fortunate place. There are still arguments among historians today about whether these forecasts counted or whether they were just a way to buy extra time. February is out, as are the hot months of summer and every other August day imaginable. The spirits of deceased Romans are being worshipped during this time. Married life is good in heaven. Once you reach June, it's bad as well. Even if you are lucky enough to find a date and get some added divine assistance, there is still much competition with all those other couples. The month of Juno, goddess of marriage herself. If you're lucky, you'll get married in June, and this will bring extra help from on high. If not, you might end up with a Tuesday in September, which is about as exciting as it sounds. Your father chooses a date at last, and your mother breathes a sigh of relief. Still, the job isn't finished. There are omens to consider now as well. The house priest lays a handful of salt and flour, sprinkled by the hearth, cursing beings over the gods inside the household in Greek. If the fire burns brightly, it's a good sign that things will go well for you. Should I cook something then? If they flicker, there's nothing left but for you to start again all over from scratch. It's as tricky as trying to stop yourself from rolling your eyes at this performance. Here is another interesting fact. A few families would dispatch a servant to the temple of Juno for her benediction. He would make an offering, a cake and a coin, and wait for a sign to appear. If a dove landed nearby, this was considered good luck. Should a caw mean the overthrow? Even if historians argue about whether these rituals were merely a formality or a genuine tribute to the gods. You watched from the sidelines as your parents debated back and forth about when it should be. Mama would prefer a Saturday. It's so much easier for wedding guests to travel. Daddy insisted that Wednesday was the best choice because it was when he got his first real break as an employee with large enterprises like Sony/IBM. What you both wanted now was any day blamed they last. And it was up to the town newspaper. He marked the chosen date on everybody's calendar, folding it away with a sigh of relief. At that point, you must tell your friends and neighbors. For this Roman story, it means sending off a servant to take invitations. These will not come in the form of beautifully written cards, but rather a brief note or even a message on fruit and maybe some fresh produce. If one is classy, one may get a poet to do the announcements. Otherwise, pray for tomorrow. You spend the rest of the day helping your mother get ready for the big announcement. She bakes honey cakes, cleans off the family silver service, and has the house thoroughly cleaned in no time. You are expected to tie your words and actions together cleanly as well. Clear clothes, smooth hair, and a polite smile. Suppose you aren't careful. Not only will your mother not let you live it down afterward, but also, one regret in life. Everyone in the family still calls your cousin Lucia the Clumsy. On the night of her unveiling, she stumbled on her own feet. The sun sets, and with it go whispers of news from the main road. The sound of your friends' and neighbors' arrival fills your house. They are eager to know before everyone else what's happening next. Your father stands up and announces the wedding date. The whole room responds with applause. You try to look enthusiastic, though you're not entirely sure what to expect. The reason for so much fuss about announcement parties is an open question. Yet historians can't decide whether it was to have some fun or to say, "Hey, everyone, celebrate and be happy with us too." When we all change shifts at the factory, worn out, you head for bed. The date's been set, the conditions are propitious, and everybody is doing nothing but talking about how you're going to get hitched at last. Typical of those supporting characters in your life. Always issues and no results. Waking to the sound of her mother bustling around the room, her arms full of strange objects. Charms, ribbons, and a small clay doll that you've had since before you can remember. Tonight is your last in your childhood bed. The house is thick with superstition. You can't see your future spouse and you can't leave the house. You were considered adults by the Romans when the 3 days of your marriage rolled around, but the night before itself meant an end to all fun and games as well. It was time now for grown-ups. Your mother sits on the bed and ties a red ribbon around your wrist. "It'll protect you," she whispers, as though the ribbon will stop everything that goes bump in the night. She puts the clay doll, your charm, on your pillow. You've had it since you were a baby, and now is the last time you will sleep with it. Tomorrow you'll leave childhood behind, along with your bulla. Historians still debate whether the bulla was to protect you from danger or just a reminder that it's time to grow up. Your father comes in with a small bowl of salt and flour, throwing it all around your bed while he prays to the household gods. The smell of salt fills your nostrils, and you hold tight so as not to sneeze. "Just in case," he says with a wink. You wonder whether he truly believes in these rituals, or if he's doing it to make your mother happy now. At any rate, no way. Here's a fun fact. I'm sure I can guess what most of you won't be able to make head or tail of. Superstitious to the core, Romans not only believed in omens and prophecies, but also looked to nature. We would call this the numinous or mysterious for signs. Significant life events like weddings had to be perfect for the gods. They believed that evil spirits were always waiting for a chance to barge in and upset things. That's why the night before the wedding was given over to rituals and charms designed to keep you safe. So if you're feeling tense or anxious, you're not alone. Every Roman bride or groom felt the same way. But here's a funny thing. Some families used to put a live chicken under the bed, imagining that the clucking would scare off evil spirits. If the chicken laid an egg during the night, it was seen as a sign of good luck. If not, breakfast would be all right. Historians are still divided on whether this was a custom or just a joke that got blown out of proportion. You try to relax, but something jars. Your grandmother enters the room carrying a bunch of herbs. She waves them over your head and mutters a prayer to Venus, goddess of love. The smell of rosemary and sage fills the room, and you start to doze. It's probably the herbs, or you're just exhausted from everything that's been happening today. Your brothers and sisters poke their heads round the door, giggling and whispering about what tomorrow will bring. They can't wait for the banquet and the games. You, too, would be overjoyed with their company, but you are nervously checking that you do not trip on this dreaded walk down the aisle. You know your cousin Gaius, who sneezed during his wedding oath and had to begin all over again. To this day, he remains the family joke, and you don't want to join him. The night grows quieter in the house. At your bedside, your mother tells you stories of her wedding night. She talks about the odd customs, the emotions, and leaving home for the first time in her life. You listen and wonder what tomorrow will be like. Will you be brave or scared stiff? Historians are still arguing whether Roman brides were excited or terrified, but you decide it's probably some of both. Tonight you're not allowed to eat very much, just a light meal of bread and honey. This is to keep you pure for tomorrow's big day. You try not to think about the banquet that waits for you there, with cakes piled high and sweet wine in abundance. You nibble at your bread and try to ignore your grumbling stomach. Before you go to sleep, your mother gives you one more piece of luck, a little silver coin to hold in your hand while you sleep. "It's for luck," she says, tucking you in. You close your eyes, holding the coin, and try to drift off. But it's difficult with tomorrow's worries heavy on your mind. What if you forget your lines? What if you don't like your new spouse? What if those hens under the bed lay 2 eggs instead of 1? You try making a joke of it, but the truth is you're nervous. Here's another amusing fact. Some families would keep watch all night, guarding the bride or groom and making sure no one tried to cast a spell or sneak in with bad intentions. If you feel like you're being observed, it is because you are by one large family and possibly a few nosy neighbors. Scholars disagree on whether these all-night vigils were a standard procedure or simply a way for parents to keep their kids out of contention. As the night continued to deepen, you began to relax. The house was silent. Your talking ornaments were in complete control, and the chicken beneath the bed clucked softly from time to time. You took a deep breath and waited for the coming of dawn to bring with it better luck. Tomorrow was just another day, although one that would probably be even stranger than today. You are not the only one to experience an episode of this nature at least once in life. Your sisters before you had gone through exactly this kind of thing and made it safely over into that blissful state. There are still one or two fine Roman couples out there who will vouch for you on that score. Or not. You eventually fall asleep, dreaming of wreaths of laurel and bags of whole honey cakes. Maybe even a chicken. Everything will be different tomorrow. But for now, you are safe in your old bed, surrounded by people who love you and superstitions. In the flickering morning sunlight, you awake to the sound of your mother's voice. Today's the day. You're getting married, and there's a steaming chaos around the house. Maidservants hurrying up and down the halls fly past outside your door carrying loads of flowers and ribbons. Your sisters are chatting away in the hall, and Grandma has already started to tell everybody the story of her wedding. Once more, you blink and throw back the covers. Except for one alarming fact, your childhood is now officially over. NOVX/Russian bride. The opposite door bursts open, and your mother enters. She is carrying a bundle of clothes. One by one, she lines them up on your bed with an air of reverence. First come the undergarments, then the white woolen tunica, which can be worn in two different ways, the simple recta or raiment tied at her waist with a cord as a belt. And lastly comes this or that other option in pectorale pendant, what they call a genuculum. Encircling her waist are the cords that will secure next Thursday's billowy cingulum, which she unwinds in a rather cat's cradle-knotted fashion. Historians today are still busy debating whether this was meant to be a symbol of fertility, a test of virtue, or simply the best solution yet for preventing one's dress from coming apart at an incautious moment. Next comes the veil. But not just any veil. The flammum is bright orange-red and blankets your head and shoulders. It is said to be the color of flame, a symbol of warmth and security in shelter. You glance at yourself in the mirror and nearly laugh. You look less like a bride than a walking torch. Your mother fiddles with the veil until it sits straight. "For good luck," she murmurs, but you suspect that it is also to stop you from running away. That traditional Roman image. No matter what your class, a bride was always attired in her flammeum. It was the one thing that instantly proclaimed you to be a bride. The tunic and belt were both standard, but depending on how wealthy your family was, the cloth of them could be quite different. If you were rich, your tunic would have a thread of gold in it. If not, there was only plain wool and plenty of hope to go around. But here's a rather interesting piece of information. Some brides would put a tiny bunch of either verbena or rosemary into their hair, believing it would keep evil spirits and jealous mill race rowers at bay. If you are an old wife, well, in the time of your wedding feast, some people even go so far as to put a small piece of iron in their shoe. Historians still argue whether these little charms actually worked or just made you walk funny. Kanae assists you into the tunic, pulling it on over your head and rearranging the folds so they lie flat. She fastens the cingulum around your hips and makes certain there is no slack in that knot. Only your husband should ever undo it, she tells you pointedly, as if you did not have enough to worry about. You try to catch your breath, but the sash is tight around your waist, and the wool is making you start to sweat. You cannot imagine how people lived through a Roman summer dressed like this. Your sisters assist with the veil, getting it over your head and fixing it into place with pins. Through the cloth it is hard to see, but that is the way bald heads like it. The veil is your defense from the evil eye and the gossip of neighbors. It is also harder to run away because the veil entangles you in a knot, especially when your feet turn cold. You try to muster a smile, but the stress of the situation is finally wearing you down. Here is something else you might not know. The Roman brides had their hair done in a special twisted fashion called sani crines, which featured 6 braids tied up with ribbons made of wool. The style was intended to mimic that of the Vestal Virgins, the holiest priestesses in Rome. To your mother, who isn't exactly a hair specialist in any case, some things are easier left to professionals. If she can't get anywhere by this point, then call a tight collar. Over the next few hours, you'll sit with your hair being pulled, twisted, and secured in place. By the end, everything feels as though you've just been pecked to death by a run of unfortunates from Deuteronomy. Your grandmother comes in with a little gift-wrapped box. Inside is a hairnet of gold thread, made specially for you. For good luck, she says, and places it over your braided hair. You feel like a giant Christmas tree, but you don't dare say anything. Even if no one quite agrees on what it is, every part of your outfit means something. Historians still debate whether the golden web was a sign of wealth, a symbol for virginity, or simply a means to keep hair from falling apart. You stand in front of the mirror trying to recognize yourself. It is like meeting a stranger, veiled and braided and bundled up in wool. Taking a heaving breath, you tell yourself that every Roman bride has been through this. You are not alone, even though you feel as if you are the pasha in some strange drama that no one knows anything about. Your mother gives you a final once-over, straightening your veil and smoothing your tunic. She hands you a small bunch of flowers. For love and remembrance, a little bit of everything. You take the flowers, your hands trembling just a tiny bit. You are ready, or as prepared as you ever will be. When you step out of your room, the whole household admires you. Your father wipes away his tears, your sisters clap, and the grandmother once again begins to talk about her wedding. You try to smile, but your heart quails. Today, you aren't just a daughter, you are a bride and the concubine of thousands. You step into the sunlight, just as if you were still in your home in Rome. The whole neighborhood waits for you, longing to see the bride. You take a deep breath, throw back your shoulders, and get ready to live through one more day. One way or another, you're a Roman bride now, outrageous costume and all. You step into the sunlight, just as if you were still in your home in Rome. The whole neighborhood waits for you, longing to see the bride. You take a deep breath, throw back your shoulders, and get ready to live through one more day. One way or another, you're a Roman bride now, outrageous costume and all. You step outside into the atrium, squinting in the morning sun, and there he is, soon to be your husband, awkwardly by the fountain, fumbling with a corner of the toga. Anxious to catch his eye, you nevertheless lovingly touch his shoulder, even though that neatest, cleanest gown has been on for nearly all day now. If you think your wedding clothes are uncomfortable, try the groom's on for size. For example, a crisp white toga, the toga virilis, renders him full-grown officially. Yet the fabric is coarse and scratchy, and you suspect he is not used to wearing this stuff for more than just a few hours at a stretch. Over his left shoulder, attached to his left wrist by a kind of clasp, he has draped a purple-bordered sash, a sign of office and, with any luck at all, a little family honor as well. Historians still debate whether the purple border was slapped on just for looks or if it meant your family had some serious connections in the Senate. But the weirdest part about his getup isn't the toga. It's the sword. Yes, your groom is toting a real, honest-to-goodness weapon, strapped to his side like he might need it at any moment. Urged on by shame, he first avoids it and then reaches for lotion, his fingers seemingly knowing his position and letting out his sadness. It's not for protection, however. The sword is a symbol of his new position as head of your future household. He is supposed to cut away all links with his old life. The syntax here is Chinese negative passive voice, and so protect you from harm. You try not to laugh, but it's hard not to when he almost trips over the scabbard. For instance, grooms and brides were expected to arrive at the marriage ceremony equipped with a weapon. This weapon didn't serve to fend off thieves, however. Weddings were also held in areas where one put on one's armor for battle with countless enemies. Roman society still had enemies, barbarians. So for a groom to carry anything less than perfection in his hand was to say he could potentially lose people's complicity and guarantee his failure. After childbirth, which wasn't a glorious experience for Roman women at the time, things started looking cleaner, calmer, more mechanical, and less touching. The toga, likewise, signified that he was ready to shoulder some adult responsibilities, administering property, making decisions, and, naturally, surviving the feast after his wedding. But here's something a little, well, different. Some grooms would jam a little piece of wolf pelt into one shoe before they stepped out, thinking it would add bravery and strength vitally needed on the big day. If you're desperately anxious, you might even rent a lucky charm from your best friend. Modern historians still wonder, did those small things work? Or did they make your feet itchy instead? His friends surround the groom, all wearing their finest tunics and trying not to look too worried. They mock around laughing, but deep down, you know they're no happier than you are. On one hand, you give your groom a twig of laurel, the emblem of victory. He puts it behind his ear, trying to appear self-assured. You wonder whether he's as scared as you are or just good at playing. The two families assemble in the atrium, exchanging polite greetings and shy smiles. Your father shakes hands with your groom and fixes him with a glance that says, "Look after her well, otherwise you'll be sorry." Your mother straightens your veil for the last time, looking to make sure things are just so. You stand there quietly, holding your bouquet and trying to remember to breathe. You may have noticed this fun fact. Before the central part of the ceremony, the bridegroom would customarily offer a little sacrifice to the family spirits, in the form of a few tiny pieces of incense or a small splash of wine. This is thought to bring good fortune and ensure a happy marriage. Glowing flames must be taken as a good omen. If, however, these sputter, keep a sharp lookout on your husband's cooking skills. Even now, there is fierce debate among scholars over whether these sacrifices were taken seriously at the time or merely served to calm everyone's nerves. The priest has come, and the others have fallen silent. He speaks a few words, wishes the couple well, and asks the gods for their blessing. Your fiancé, trying to appear majestic, stands there, but his hands are timidly shaking a little. You give him a small smile, hoping to calm him down, and possibly yourself too. The ceremony is about to begin, and you realize that your bridegroom is not just marrying you. He is taking on new demands. He is required to provide for you, protect you, and pass the family line on. This is too much to ask of any man, particularly when he is still working out how to oversee his knots. After the priest leaves the building, your bridegroom advances and offers you his hand. You take it, your fingers shaking. Then the two of you walk together out into the sunshine. The sword by his side glints in the light, marking not just a party but the beginning of a new life. You look at your bridegroom and wonder what he's thinking. Is he excited or nervous? He regrets it now that he has just uploaded more comfortable shoes. It is still hotly debated by historians today whether Roman grooms experienced their big day with the same pressure as brides, or if this was pure convention and they were along for the ride. In any case, there is no turning back now. You are a married couple. Togas, swords, and all. The guests arrive, filling the house with good hearts and gossip. You take a deep breath, steady yourself, and prepare for another step. Because you are not just a bride spawn of Roman marriage, whatever its weird parlance and even weirder costuming. When you go out the door, the world is different, filled with a kind of excitement that makes the air heavy. Neighbors and friends, even some people you have never met, stream into the street. You hang on to your bouquet more tightly. The breeze ruffles your veil. Today, you aren't just walking to a new home. You're the star of a Roman wedding parade, and everyone wants front row seats. A protective circle forms around you, your family. Your father is tall, your mother rubs her eyes, and your brothers and sisters bounce with joy. The priest gives a benediction, and now it's time for you to begin. You take a deep breath, move ahead, and the march is underway. A bit of general knowledge. The Roman wedding parade, or deductio, was one of the most essential parts of the day. It marked your transition from your family's house to your husband's, indicating your readiness to make a significant investment in this product. Everyone in. Social history. The whole neighborhood turns out for the parade, and the bigger the crowd that comes to watch it, the better. If you're lucky, the weather will be perfect. If not, you can only hope that your veil doesn't get blown away. So now you know. As you walk, the people throwing nuts at both yourself and your husband go in for the real thing. This is an ancient fertility rite meant to bring good luck, although it mostly worries you that someone is going to slip on a walnut and become the next family story. A few children scurry to pick up the nuts, in the hopes of getting a snack or some good luck. Historians have trifled among themselves over whether the nut throwing was a solemn rite or merely a means of some fun. You hold the torch into the air, the flame flickering in the sunlight. It is made of hawthorn wood. This can be seen as a symbol of protection, yet also new beginnings. As you wave it high, try not to let your veil catch fire. Beside you walks the man who will become your husband, his face proud, and maybe a little nervous as he feels the sword hanging at his waist bouncing against his clothes with each step taken. You two have to lead the way. Your families follow suit, then musicians, and behind them a crowd that seems to increase with every step. Sound and music fill the streets. The musicians have set up flutes and lyres and are playing tunes through the air. Your friends sing songs of marriage, some sweet, others a little cheeky. You hear a few jokes from the crowd, about to be your new life which was not always certain, or about how your groom dances. You try not to laugh, but it's hard when your best friends make faces at you from behind your mother's back. Here's another interesting fact. The procession would often stop at crossroads, where you'd offer a little sacrifice to the Lara's competales, guardian spirits of the neighborhood. Some grain, a sip of wine, or a few coins would suffice. It was supposed to keep you safe on your journey and make assimilation into your new home easier. If you forget, your grandmother will loudly remind you. Historians still argue whether these stops were related to religion or were just a way of demonstrating your family's largesse. Blessings and jokes are your companions as you walk. Some blessings are thoughtful. It's my goodwill that you have enough joy. It's my blessing that you support your husband and raise many children. Other blessings are frivolous. They even call out to your groom on his wedding night, teasing him and expecting a blush from under your veil, but nobody knows how you're doing. Traditionally, these jibes are made partly to amuse and partly to expel evil influences. Even if it feels a bit uncomfortable, you tell yourself that all brides have to pass through this phase. Vendors in the market stop by the roadside to watch. Some throw flowers. Others give you a little something else. A loaf of bread, a few dates, or one lucky copper coin in the kiln. These presents are all received with a smile till your arms ache. Every step seems heavier. Your groom tries to help, but by this time, he is juggling because both hands are occupied, supporting the weight of his sword as well as another bundle, the laurel sprig, and completing his torch. You both look rather absurd, but then that is half the fun of it. Let me tell you one funny thing. Sometimes a false bride would be included in the procession, dressed in a mismatched veil and gown. Her role is to ward off any malignant spirits or scorned suitors who might disrupt the wedding day. If you're lucky enough, then your false bride is your best friend, and she is enjoying all the attention. If not, you can only hope that she won't trip over something and start a new family custom. Whether the false bride was a true superstition or just a way of involving more friends in the fun, historians are still debating that point. The procession winds its way through town. With each block, the noise and joy get louder. You feel a mixture of excitement and nervousness, your heart pounding as you near your new home. The crowd cheers, the band plays more audibly, and your friends throw a final clutch of dried black beans for good luck onto the ground. At length, you come to the abode of your husband, just as mentioned in the poem. The door has been put up with streaming ribbons, pale jadeite bamboo, green python leaves, spikes of juju blossoms, and lilacs in laughing bloom. There is a small crowd of people waiting for you. With your torch held high, you stand on the threshold and take a deep breath. This is it, the moment when you officially leave your old life behind and step into your new one. You look back at your husband and give a grateful smile. You cross the threshold together, surrounded by family, friends, and enough nuts to feed an army. You're as ready as you can be at this point, or at least in the Roman bride's world. You stand at the threshold of your new home, and the crowd presses in behind you. The air is thick with the scent of flowers and burning torches. Your heart thumps against your chest wall as you grip your bouquet and try not to fall over your own feet. The musicians quiet down, and for one moment, everything feels still. At last, this is the very occasion that we have all been waiting for. The wedding ceremony itself. Your groom steps out, his sword glinting in the sunlight, and offers you his hand. You take it, your fingers trembling just a little. Before you is the priest, his ceremonial robes fluttering in a slight breeze. He holds a small loaf of bread and a bowl of salt together between his hands, like offerings left out at an altar. The priest begins to chant praises to the gods, asking that they bless your union. The words are very ancient, passed down through the generations, and you try to keep up, though your mind races. Here's a little tidbit of commentary. Roman marriage ceremonies were set at the entrance to the bridegroom's house. It was called confarreatio if you were from a patrician family, and the ceremony involved each person sharing a special cake made from spelt bread. For the ordinary people, however, it was a less elaborate rite but still involved breaking and sharing bread as an emblem of unity and kindness. To break bread together meant that you were now one family. But here's a little-known piece of trivia. Some families would put a tiny bit of cheese or honey into the bread secretly in an attempt to make the marriage sweet and life happy. If you found the honey, it was supposed to mean extra good luck. If you found the piece of cheese, well, at least you wouldn't go hungry. Historians still argue whether these little surprises were widespread or just something amusing for the family. Reaching for the mirror, she pulled it out into the night to make another seed of brilliance. This time, only a single piece of work emerged from the lamp, holding in all its coiled tendrils. It was at this juncture that the great masters of the day decided to gather in numbers and form a team of 8. There were 2 sections in the village where they lived, Guyang and Shaoguang. However, people here were all impoverished. They made their living by farming land that stretched across the plains, with oil and grain on one side and cotton and wheat on the other. Because most farmers concentrated on grain farming for their own household needs, it was very easy to meet the Chinese government's call for an expanded area of farmland, which could be cultivated with commercial crops akin to oranges, cherries, and lemons rather than just rice and wheat. The manager said, "No," then told the staff that he would not demand money from them for wearing their uniforms, but instead encouraged them to work together and earn money through their hard work. Her words encouraged many people. Meanwhile, there have been some changes both in the number of people working under these various job titles and in terms of their ages, which we will not discuss further. One example is the quartz rooms ratio. It used to be a fine 5.3, but now it's only 4.2. This has kept employers happy, but even so, they have started paying higher wages than before because people are still taking less pleasure in other deteriorating benefits. Weber held it. That is, people who were hurting still liked getting paid. The host raises a glass and asks for good fortune and a long marriage. Then everyone raised their glasses and toasts were made. Everyone claps and there is a general cheer. The musicians strike up a wedding song. One of the crowd comes forward to bite their thumb, and you find yourself able to relax at last. It was hard, yes, but no hearts were stabbed. That's a win any day. But the ceremony is not yet complete. Your bridegroom lifts you, even picks you up, and carries you across the threshold. The gesture is intended to keep you from tripping, which would be a bad omen. You lean against his shoulder, trying not to laugh, as the crowd hoots and hollers. If you're lucky, he won't drop you. If he does, well, at least that's a good start on a story to tell your grandchildren. Here's a curious detail. As you stepped over the threshold of your new home, some households, none did it in particular, would scatter coins or petals over the lintel. Supposedly, this custom was meant to draw in wealth and happiness. If you were exceptionally fortunate, a handful of lentils would fly through the air as well, because nothing says a happy marriage like good cooking. Scholars have yet to determine conclusively whether these practices were developed to bring good luck or if they were deliberately designed to create work for servants to clean up later on. With the shift of setting to home, the cacophony of the street outside quiets down, and your new family surrounds you. The hearth fire burns brightly, and the table is spread with bread and wine, and your new life begins officially. You breathe deeply, feeling a blend of excitement and release. You made it, you survived the ceremony, the jokes, and the audience's jeers. You are a content rewriter. You can rewrite sentences in the content, and I can help you achieve greater variation in your sentence structure. In addition, when submitting to clients or updating a website, they will expect only those variations on grammar that are necessary for conveying that uniquely human tone. The rewritten article must reflect what you have produced when producing Form 2 content. We finished the ceremony, but the real party was just about to start. Before you know it, the laughter, music, and rich smell of meat roasting fill the house. The wedding feast is the highlight of the day, and everyone comes equipped for celebration. You are seated at the head table with your new husband by your side, and you feel quite like royalty. even with your veil draped halfway across one eye. Here's a mainline fact. Roman wedding feasts were famous for their abundance and variety. The tables groaned under the weight of roasted birds, platters of fish, bowls of olives, and mountains of honey cakes. Wine flows, and the guests toast to happiness with every sip. The more food and drink, the better, given all that is involved with hosting a lavish feast. It's a sign of your family's wealth. If you're lucky, the cook has remembered your favorite dish. If not, you hope there's enough honey cake for everyone. But here is a curious snippet of information. The banquet is not just a matter of eating. It is also studded with games, songs, and a few traditions that might seem rather peculiar. For example, one popular pastime is throwing nuts at the newlyweds. Another option is to bet on whether you will have any children for him. If you are unlucky, an old great-uncle will start a conga line, and all night long it will be your business to dodge his rather dodgy dance steps. Historians still debate whether these games were meant to tell the future or to entertain the guests. You look around the room, taking in all the chaos. Kids are darting about between tables, grabbing lollies and giggling. Musicians struck up lively airs, and your friends sang songs that got sillier with each verse. A round of riddles starts. Prizes for the gentleman or lady who answers them successfully range from flower garlands to shiny coins. You try to get involved, but all that excitement is going to your head. Check out this fact for pure fun. In the wedding feast, there was often a fake bride, the term, a friend or relative dressed in some ridiculous attire. The fake bride's job is to chase off the evil spirits that may be lurking around, but her primary function is to make everybody laugh. If you're lucky, your fake bride is your best friend, and she is enjoying every moment. If not, one can only hope she doesn't trip and spill red wine on your new tunic. Historians still argue today whether the fake bride was indeed a real superstition or simply an excuse for a little extra fun. The food keeps coming, massive plates of fresh fruit, all different kinds, bowls of nuts in so many sizes and shapes that it would be impossible to count them all, and enough trays of honey cakes for everyone. You try to keep your head and only have a little, but people keep urging you to have just one more. Your new husband looks just as lost but manages somehow to join in the toasts and jokes. You meet his glance, and both of you share a little laugh. Maybe this marriage business won't be so bad after all. The guests are getting livelier, and their jokes risk getting cruder as the night progresses. One of them teases your husband about his sword, asking if he knows which end is which. Another relates a tale from a wedding where the bride's veil caught fire. Luckily, it is still intact. Even though your cheeks ache from all of the smiling, you try to enjoy this whole experience. Here's a strange note. The entire meal was served up on platters or bowls of highly polished silver. However, some families would have a kind of libum, sweet cheese bread, which they offered to their household gods before eating. If the bread rose correctly, it was considered to bring good luck. But if it fell, well, one just hoped nobody noticed. Historians still argue over whether all this stuff was taken seriously or was simply an excuse for one more snack before dinner. The longer the night goes on, the sillier the games become. Wow, it's now a contest to see who can hold the most olives on his nose, and your younger brother wins by a mile. The musicians play a slow song, and the last dance is for the bride and groom. He almost steps on your toes many times, but wine-slickened floors, of course, are far longer lived than walnut shells and cabbage leaves. You both laugh, to applause from the guests. In addition to food, the banquet is also a time for presents. People come up to congratulate you with little trifles, ornaments, coins, or small plaster images of the gods. A wish for your happiness, health, or many children accompanies each present. You give thanks to everyone involved, but your arms grow increasingly heavy as you try to carry such gifts around. Your mother's face is beaming like the sun, while even Dad tries not to sniffle. Suddenly, you have this overwhelming feeling of gratitude for your family, friends, and even in-laws. As the evening comes to an end, guests walk out singing and laughing still. The place is a mess. Crumbs cover the floor, every chair has an empty cup, and nuts are scattered here and there, having rolled under someone's table. But you are tired and happy. The party was a triumph, and not even a joke went wrong. He gives you an exhausted but happy smile. Together, you have helped make this into a night for all time to be remembered. The food they ate was good. There was much laughter throughout, and there were enough peculiar customs to keep historians talking for centuries. The last guest has just stumbled out the door, and the house is quiet but for the soft crackle of the hearth fire. You're tired and your feet ache. Your veil is askew, but the night is far from over. Now comes the part everyone has been whispering about all day, the wedding night. You try not to think about it, but as your heart pounds, you realize you are about to enter a strange new world full of weird Roman customs and laws. Your mother comes in, her eyes glistening with pride and perhaps a few tears. She gives you a gentle hug, straightens your veil, and says some quiet words of advice. "Be brave," she says, pressing a small charm into your hand. "And remember, you're not alone." You nod, trying to sound assured, but inside you're just one big bundle of nerves. There's this mainstream fact. At least for a while, a Roman wedding night was a public event. Every man, woman, and child of any kind at all might join you and your husband in the bridal chamber. It's meant as a sign of support and good wishes, but mostly it just makes you wish you could make yourself invisible inside your veil. The crowd is gathered at the door, singing songs that would make even your grandmother blush and cracking jokes that make you try to smile, but whose hands are burning your cheeks. Your husband now performs a little ritual before you enter the bedchamber. He unties the special knot on your belt, the cingulum, symbolic of leaving your old life behind. If he botches the knot, everyone laughs and says it's a sign that your marriage will be long and happy. If he gets it right on the first try, your mother will probably keep on bragging about it until the end of her time. Historians are still debating whether this rite was a test of patience for the groom or gave guests something juicy to gossip about. You enter the bedchamber, your heart racing. It's decorated with flowers and candles, the bed piled high with soft blankets. Your new husband looks as nervous as you feel. Then the door closes, and for the first time all day, the two of you are alone together. Both of you breathe a sigh of relief, glad for some peace at last. Here's another little fact to keep you amused. In some families, it was customary to place a small statue of Venus, the love goddess, in the room, which would bless any marriage. If you are traditional, one small prayer to Venus before you climb into bed, please. You glance over at the statue of Venus on the table, hoping she is feeling good tonight. But that peace cannot last long. After a few minutes, the family gathered in front of the door. They wait for any sign that the marriage has been consummated. Some families bang on their pots and pans, while others sing or tell jokes. This tradition is meant to bring good luck and ward off evil spirits. You'd think of leaving this noisy city and relocating to a secluded acreage in the country. Historians still argue over whether this disruptive celebration was intended to shame the couple or extend the parties a little longer. Next, you and your husband exchange nervous smiles, trying to shut out the noise outside. You also speak in a low voice to each other, sharing your hopes and fears for the future. It's an awkward moment. However, there's a feeling of consolation in knowing that both of you are in the same boat. Now you find that, irrespective of the peculiar customs and public formalities, this is a moment just between you two, starting fresh as husband and wife. Here's a cute footnote. In some families, the bride was carried over the threshold by her husband. It was not only auspicious, but also ensured that she didn't trip and bring trouble into the house. If you're bold enough, ask your husband to carry you once around the room for extra good luck. If he drops you, well, at least you'll have an amusing tale to tell your children. With the noise outside finally subsiding, you crawl into bed, tired but happy. Today, you were swept along by a whirlwind of customs. Look at your new husband, who, with a shy smile, assures you that this marriage will be successful. With your eyes closed, you listen to that gentle pop of fireplace wood and the misplaced laughter of someone else. At the moment, you think about tomorrow, and then, as a wife, you have entirely different roles and pressures. But at present, all you want is a little peace to rest, letting your mind drift to the future in store. When she awoke, the sun was shining in a way that had never happened before. The bed felt different, too. A different touch, but somehow familiar, and still soft enough to feel good against her skin. For a moment, She does not know where she is. Then the memory floods back over her. The wedding, the party jokes and laughter, and the women who have come out to greet her now in this strange new place. There's already a stack of gifts on the breakfast table. Tradition still rules. On the day following their wedding bath, friends and family present them with gifts. Some are practical, a set of warm blankets, several pairs for each member in the household, or plates and drinking glasses as needed to replace those broken last winter. Others take a different turn. Pausing under the light fixture, she picks up first a statue of the stork, a bird whose mere appearance causes people to be pregnant, and then her attention is caught by an old wooden spoon, curiously carved in. It is a known fact that in Roman times, newly married couples were bestowed presents from both sides of the family. This newlywed package could consist of anything from jewelry and coins to woodworking tools or good luck charms. The presents were meant to be something that everyone could contribute to and possibly offer some advice. Perhaps you are lucky enough to receive something over here which is helpful, or maybe by the following relatives meeting, everyone will have forgotten about this item and, though curious enough, some families even went so far as to believe that the thing first touched by a bride upon arriving at home would determine how things would go for her from then on. That's why the first thing your mother-in-law did was to tell you to reach out and touch the hearth fire last night. If you touched bread, it meant you wouldn't go grocery shopping that day. If you touched wool, you'd never be cold. If you've ever been in the dark and felt the family dog, well, nobody can guess how many puppies that might mean. Historians disagree whether this belief was taken seriously or if it was merely a superstition around the banqueting table at the head of the hall, so the bride did not bump into anything. A soft rap announces the mother-in-law. She brings bread and honey, milk warm enough to drink out of hand from the goats, and a smile as gentle as the morning sun. Her eyes are full of kindness as she wishes you a happy marriage. 2. She has a little counsel for you. Keep the home fires burning, never let the bread bin go empty, and listen to your partner before speaking. You eat a honey cake as you nod. Your new husband comes in to where you are. He looks just as drowsy as you feel, but still manages a sly look as he holds up a minor bronze key, culminating at you. And out it comes with some pomp. Your hands shake slightly from beginning to end. The key is heavy, both physically and metaphorically. It means that now you have complete responsibility for this household, from the dining room to the kitchen, pantry, and closet to the family shrine. It's also worth noting that the morning after the wedding, your whole position would often receive a new title, matrona, meaning married woman. It's a mark of respect and a reminder that you have entered a new stage in life. Your friends may laugh at your new title, but you can't help feeling proud. The wedding, the feast, and now the marriage chamber. You're prepared for whatever comes next and how life might turn out. 1. In the morning, however, the gifts and sweet nothings of this bridegroom's world are interrupted by a touch of bantering. Your sisters-in-law look in, laughing and exchanging with eyes and eyebrows what's to come on that wedding night ahead. Your mother-in-law gives you this knowing smile and hands you a small jar of olive oil. For keeping the peace, she says with a wink. You blush but thank her. Historians today argue as to whether these little jokes were meant to humiliate the bride or welcome her into the family. The morning hours are now spent opening presents, having breakfast, and hearing stories from new relatives. People reminisce about their weddings, colorful, funny, and occasionally brazen. You discover that every bride undergoes the same trepidation, the same enthusiasm, and the same curious requests following strange moves by everyone. You are part of a long tradition which provides some small solace. Here's an interesting fact. In certain families, the bridegroom and bride might receive a pair of doves. The doves symbolized love and loyalty. If they stayed together, it was a good sign for the newly married couple. If the doves flew off in different directions, I would only hope no one noticed. You watch your new husband release the doves in the courtyard and laugh when both birds dive immediately down to peck crumbs left over from yesterday's banquet. As the day goes on, friends, neighbors, and even a few people you barely know come to call. Everyone is arriving to wish you well, give you advice, and take a peek at the new couple. You smile, accept their gifts, and try to remember everyone's name. It's overwhelming but also charming. By afternoon, you finally have a moment to yourself. You sit by the fire, the key to your new house in your lap, and start thinking about what has happened today. The wedding, the feast, the gifts, the laughter. It all seems like a dream, but the fire's warmth and that big, heavy key make you realize your new status for real. You are now a married Roman matron, with unknown future adventures to come and doubtless a few more odd customs. The wedding and the days following go by in a whirl of new routines, visiting relatives, and advice that seems to come from every direction at once. You're getting used to your role as a wife. You're learning to manage household tasks, such as the kitchen, storeroom, and household chores. However, you soon find out that not every Roman marriage is like that in Gone with the Wind. Some hardly differ from an episode of Dynasty, with all the tears, excitement, and scandal. From chatting with neighbors, you learn of marriages that did not last. In Rome, it is not so rare a thing for a marriage to be broken up. This means if trouble develops, you don't have to tough it out till death stops all suffering. Both men and women may divorce, except the wife usually has to go first. All a couple needs to do is say the bare word, "I release you," and presto, they are no longer married, no lawyers, no documents, but quite a few witnesses and much gossip. An undisputed fact, Roman divorce might be surprisingly easy by the standards of most societies, ancient or modern. If a couple couldn't get along together, they could go their separate ways and try their luck with someone new. The only thing demanded was that the dowry be returned in full, minus what had been appropriated through bad behavior. If you are lucky, your clan recoups all. If not, there's a fair chance that everyone will end up quarreling over who gets to keep the good silver. Historians still argue whether this freedom made Roman marriages stronger or just more problematic. But here's a fun fact for you. To ensure everyone knew a recent couple had parted ways, they would pretend to row publicly first. If you're inclined to be theatrical, however, this kind of thing can be a lot of fun. Maybe throw the soon-to-be ex a loaf of bread or an olive tree, then stand back and watch as someone who also happens to have been wronged in love comes by to get their angry on. It's a high-class drama club that the big houses love. You can be sure this story will be rehearsed many times over at dinner parties for years to come. Whether these very public breakups were designed to protect reputations or whether audiences just wanted some entertainment for their lives, historians are still discussing this sensitive question. You hear about women who married again and again, each time a little less ceremoniously than the last. Some even kept their old wedding veils as souvenirs, reminders of all the wacky customs they'd undergone. If you are a widow, you are required to wait a while before remarrying, at least 10 months, to be assured of no surprises. But after that, you may begin anew with a husband, another dowry to bring in from your father, and perhaps even new in-laws to placate. Here's another amusing little-known fact. The most glamorous women in Roman history have often been divorced or married posthumously. Augustus's wife, Livia Drusilla, had once been a bride by the time she was empress. The same is true for the daughter of Julius Caesar and others. Divorce was not scandalous. It just happened to everyone now and then. But on the other hand, if one made a scandal of oneself, e.g., by eloping with a gladiator or by getting caught in a temple after hours, that matter could turn out to require more serious consideration than you were bargaining for and possibly land in legal court for a decision. Not all marriages end in disaster. By and large, couples are satisfied, even if marriage has become unspectacular. Husbands and wives work together, raise families, and grow old together. You can always hear stories about them alongside. Men and women crying, disputing at the dinner table. There's always someone to rely on in times of trouble. Did love ever play a part in Roman marriages, as historians are still arguing? Or was it all duty and the struggle for survival? There's room for a little of each. Remarried individuals often found that remarriage was a new start. If your first marriage failed, you got a second chance. Maybe even with someone who was nicer to you or else liked your cooking. It was different the second time around. The party was on a smaller scale with a shorter guest list. Fewer jokes were made, but the customs did not change even with that. There were the veils, the bread, and the fire of life, and all the rest. As a quaint little detail, some women wore a different color veil for their second wedding to show they'd been down this road before. If you're courageous, skip the veil altogether and wear a hoop of flowers instead. The neighbors will talk, but you've gotten used to that by now. Roman marriage, you come to realize, is a balancing act, the weighing of duty against tradition, of desire against family, of freedom and unity. You have to observe the old ways, but you also have the power to shape your future. Whether you are mated for life or start over again with someone new, at this point, you are still part of a long, complex story, one that is ongoing, even as you sit by the hearth listening to the latest gossip from nearby. While the fire is crackling, with an ardent sob in your heart, you cannot help bemoaning such a fate as may yet lithely rise before you. Will you be lucky? Or will your marriage wind up as material for ribald neighborhood gossip? Maybe one day you'll know, but of course not yet. Now you feel grateful for everything. For the moment, all is starting fresh around you, surrounded by relatives who have contributed several alcoholic centers to this gathering of yours. Present, this is home and not one of many. You have friends nearby, but pushing off from last year's lumberjack festival is a bit tough in this kind of environment. There are also 3 Filipino women walking up the street, lugging bags bigger than their heads, on which they should pay no dollar tariff and customs that are just plain weird. After all that, you think you've seen it all: veils, banquets, corny jokes, and even the occasional flying loaf of bread. However, no sooner do you think, yeah, that's a Roman wedding, than you hear about ceremonies that don't quite fit the stereotype. True to life, not all weddings in Rome go as planned. Others are even stranger. They can continue rather traditional lifestyles only if viewed through the lens of wealth, considering whether any of the cost-effective measures are effective, or if any are effective in ways other than an interesting study. Roman wedding from the slave market, contubernum, slave wedding. These are not Roman legal marriages, but they might be the ones that count to those engaged in such relationships. This is how 2 enslaved people can give each other from. If this idea seems suspicious to you, considering their occasional publicity, it is covert. There are no banquets, no legal deal, and no gift price. That could be somber. Golden wine was passed round to drink, a common sedition singing of a lifetime together. Historians still dispute whether freeborn Romans ever took these marriages seriously or just laughed them into silence. Here's an oldie but a goodie. We all know that traditional Roman law refused to acknowledge the validity of slave marriages, yet enslaved people nevertheless married one another and raised children. Sometimes, if a couple were released, they would marry. But in the meantime, their whole way of living was founded upon their traditions and ceremonies. There, you learn love and companionship can exist without the sanction of law or a hill of honey cakes. However, and this is an interesting little sidebar, some soldiers remaining at sea as far out as 180 miles finally just went ahead and married themselves. Legally, no Roman legionnaire could go home and get married until he was mustered out. That didn't prevent them from finding wives in remote regions. They might trade souvenirs, a ring, a wooden or ivory-carved object, or perhaps even a lucky coin, with each far away from his bedmate before it and quitting his function. When you loved a soldier and he was your sweetheart, you could wait forever for a real wedding, knowing that the love had to be strong enough to last through such separation. To this day, historians are still debating whether high-ranking officers fully sanctioned these unofficial partnerships or if they were overlooked. Not to mention foreign expatriates in Rome who transplant all their wedding traditions. A few Greeks have prominent, noisy personalities that include music and dance. Some others take a small bath or provide a sense of God with hair before marriage. A circuit looks when a geographer is marrying. The Nawalas look back, surgically opposed. You start to realize that Rome truly is a melting pot, with several cultures contributing their take on ancient traditions. Another thing I found humorous is that the Romans, upon discovering these exotic traditions, borrowed a few bits here and there for their weddings. Or you can sneak a Greek tune into the feast, or don an Egyptian-inspired jewelry design. Alternatively, you can have a foreign friend do a traditional dance in front of the audience for you by really putting yourself out there. The young ones rejoice. The old scold in closer tut. It is still somewhat ironically debated by historians whether this fusion of cultures has painted Roman weddings in a more colorful light or muddied the waters even further. And you come across a neighbor who was the child of formerly enslaved people. Their wedding took place in the courtyard, and all was simple. A loaf of bread made by a sister and one string of flowers. There was nobody to marry them. No spellbound words that would bind their marriage, only a simple agreement, each promising the other some tender assistance. With one such exhale, she smiles, recalling the laughter, the wheezing of spinet strings, and a sense of well-being that blew in broad sweeps from one house to the next. Every wedding, no matter how banal, you realize, is an opportunity for a new narrative to open. Weirdly, it seems, in some regions of the empire, at their nuptials, both bride and bridegroom leap together over a besom or staff. It is done this way to bring good luck and drive away the evil spirits. If you are feeling ambitious today, you might want to give it a go. Just be careful not to fall. Whether this tradition originated in Rome or was adopted from elsewhere, historians are still debating its origins, as wedding traditions tend to become pervasive and mutable. You also read of weddings that disregard any of these expectations. A wealthy widow who marries a man half her age, or two souls from opposite sides of the planet coming together in mutual penance against their families. In the marketplace, they whisper of such tales, in awe and behind their backs. Very well. Roman society, with all its laws and conventions, can still harbor rebels and visionaries. And now you're walking the avenues, and all you can see are signs of celebrants. Ribbons hanging off doors, music drifting out into yards, petals yet on the sidewalks. When you begin to twist your neck and slow down and remember that this is a thing for 5%. In so many ways, every marriage has, in gentlest shadings, some wavelets of this fresh natural thing bubbling into it from without. Rome contained multitudes that lived elsewhere, while showing their young not-native towns just perfectly landscaped parklands and glistening shorelines. Why should the tale of it escape me with an accident unendingly unfolding, realizing there is no one way to be married in Rome? Whether a Roman or an ex-slave, whether a soldier, blowjobby like Thersites, or such names stream like a tide in the sea. A deuteragonist, a gladiator, if you're foreign for your fatherland. Into what holes will you inscribe yourself? Which rites will you come to? Unto what signifiers will you be born? After which you scramble up the steep stairs to your home. In your thoughts, tales dwell and bloom. It is in this that you understand that Roman weddings are as diverse and unpredictable as the city that gave birth to them. No matter who you are or from where you hail, there's a place for all of us to participate in this ancient rite alongside every type of joy and mess. At the hearth you sit, and your head spins with tales of the day. The soft snap of the fire-colored shadows on the walls. Memories of veils and togas, breads and fires, joking brotherhoods exploding into real tears, and all the rituals that evoke an odious Roman wedding. It is not difficult to envision why these traditions have survived for so long and why they continue to beguile audiences. In some ways, Roman weddings were not unlike contemporary ones. It feels like a mix of excitement, nerves, and impressing one another. But the truth is, families are still arguing about guest lists, friends are still making stupid sex jokes under their breath, and everyone is secretly hoping it's all going to turn out perfect. The specifics might be different. Nobody pelts you with nuts or binds your dress up in an enchanted knot, but the emotions are similar. For example, a universal fact. The reason behind many of the practices today taken as household for weddings finds its ancient roots in Rome. Veils, bouquets, and the exchange of rings all began with Roman brides and grooms. The ancient Roman superstitions are alive and well, as the tradition of carrying the bride over the threshold came from this belief. Smiling, you reflect upon how those very same rituals are followed today, even though people may not know from whence those rituals came. But one fun fact, however strange the Roman customs were, some of them are still uniquely practiced there today. The fake bride in the wedding procession, or the celebration of throwing nuts at the couple. The modern wedding equivalent. Imagine telling it today? The jury is still out on whether these traditions were developed to defend the newlyweds, for village pastime, or simply as fodder for gossipers through the ages. You recall the debates you have overheard, historians shouting about what the flammeum veil represents or whether they love us, and you know for a fact that the latter one is false. Tales range from stories about family and duty to tales of people falling in love, even in the most arranged of marriages. And, in reality, the truth is somewhere in between, buried in laughter and nerves and soon-to-be acts alone of two people moving on with their lives. Curling up on the corner of your couch, you take in the weight of history all around. The fire, the key, and the tiny Venus statue atop the shelf are reminders of the ways that made up the marriage in which your new life was about to embark. You understand these traditions are not just for the past. These stories are of hope, of connection, and of the urge to belong. Whether you're a bride in ancient Rome, a newlywed, or just a young person hearing fairy tales at bedtime, you are part of the long trail that rewinds into the history of people trying to understand what love and marriage mean. Fun fact, just as some Roman wedding customs have survived for thousands of years, this is the way that many in Generation Z imagine them passing down other traditions. Still others have fallen out of memory, living on only in the history books or as stories for inquisitive tellers. Anyway, no one celebrating nowadays may realize this or think of them back in these distant past happy days. But every toss of the bouquet to the air and every wearing of white garments or dance at a fest is just a laugh through time. Hosted.capture.flinders. The most bizarre thing you think about Roman weddings is not the rituals themselves so much as just how homey it feels here. The specifics are bound to change, but the thoughts and feelings they arouse are universal. You smile, knowing that you are only the most recent in a long succession of couples to walk this way and will not be the last. But as the fire dies down, and you find yourself breathless in front of a campfire, that peace sets in, the wedding, dinner, the jokes, or just the eternal advice. No matter what happens next, you're part of a tradition that goes back centuries. Perhaps you might even throw in a couple of unusual traditions of your own. The firelight fades, and the house goes still. You sink further into your seat, allowing the heat to saturate your bones. The laughter and music of the wedding recede to muted memories, the last sounds of a lullaby fading softly into the night. It lifts the weight of the day off you, and in its place, a presence of stillness wraps comfortably around your heart. Outside, the city is peaceful, wears the low moon like a silver scene of empty streets. A dog barks in the distance, then all is quiet. You shut your eyes, the light crackles from the fire, and your controlled inhale acts as a calming noise. Secured in the guided arms of home and tradition, even under a warm blanket, we can feel winter. Of all the couples who came before you, each added their story to the tapestry of Roman weddings. Their dreams, their laughter, their fleeting little moments of bravery. They are pure tendrils of that same gentle flow pushing you along. You understand that, though the customs may be weird and the parties wild, underneath there is always just the same thing at stake. A promise, a start, and the chance at love. Lose your thought. Looser than that, it needs to be floating away like petals in a stream. Filed under Pros, Writing, leave a comment. October 15th, 2016. The cares of the day seem to dissipate away and are replaced by thoughts of exciting new adventures and kinder tomorrows. Things are okay exactly as they are. You are safe, you are loved, and everything is happening just as it should be. The past is a warm quilt, the future a calm wind, and for now, there is rest. Good night and sweet dreams.